France, specifically the city of Paris, had a rising lesbian subculture in the early decades of the 20th century. Bars like Montmartre and beautiful apartment buildings on the left bank housed a variety of queer women who were pioneering innovative art forms and identities. The years leading up to the Second World War were filled with radical change, including changes in thought and breakthroughs in psychoanalysis. A variety of surrealists would incorporate the ideas of psychoanalysis like Freud to further their artistic exploration. Claude Cahun, a queer French photographer, created art that questioned gender and sexual norms prevalent in the 20th century using a surrealist lens, using the writings of Freud and Havelock Ellis as inspiration. Cahun's catalog of works would rise to fame in the early 1990s after lesbian feminism of the 1970s and 80s encouraged many to critically question gender norms as well as the patriarchy. After death, Cahun's library of photographs became a revolutionary perspective on gender and sexuality, using psychoanalysis as inspiration, helping to heighten the voices of other queer people nearly a century later. Claude Cahun, originally named Lucie Renée Schwab, was born in the seaside city of Nantes, France. Throughout their life, Cahun would suffer many prejudices and injustices caused by their queer and Jewish identity, whether that be switching schools because of an anti-Semitic incident or being sentenced to death by invading Nazi troops. They went against the grain, being themselves no matter what others thought or believed. Cahun would live through 2 world wars, revolutions, both political and cultural, the rise of fascism, increasing queer visibility, and the growing influence of psychoanalysis. Yet, these monumental societal moments never ceased their creative mind. In fact, they would become key artistic influences that helped them create a multitude of works with their partner and collaborator, Marcel Moore. Marcel Moore and Claude Cahun would live through immense change with one another, originally meeting and becoming stepsisters long before they became romantic partners. Moore's widowed mother married Cahun's divorced father in 1917. Moore, who was born Suzanne Malherbe, would meet a then 15-year-old Cahun at the age of 17, and they would begin their lifelong artistic and romantic collaboration. Claude Cahun was one of the many queer women living in France during the early decades of the 20th century. Women who loved other women were forging new identities as well as innovating artistic forms and taking on century-old cultural institutions. This subculture was thriving and was helping many people produce a variety of artistic creations, inspiring many queer people that related to these artists to flock to the city of Paris. During the years that led up to the Second World War, Paris was among one of the most liberal cities in the world, while not quite as liberal as Berlin, but leagues ahead of New York and London. These innovative women in the City of Lights saw their futures illuminated in Paris, a city where they were able to be themselves and explore what it meant to be a queer woman in the early 20th century through whatever medium they saw fit. Cahun's exploration of gender and sexual identity is a crucial part of understanding the meaning behind many of their photographs. Cahun, like many surrealists of the time, were heavily influenced by the writings of psychoanalysis like Sigmund Freud. For example, Freud's essay Civilized Sexual Morality, where he specifically depicts women as passive and weak when it comes to their sexual instincts, could be seen as an influence in Autoportrait 95, a piece created in 1939. In the photograph Autoportrait 95, we see Cahun resting in a bed of vegetation, their eyes closed and body barely covered by a faux cheetah fur. They are surrounded by a variety of overgrown plants, to an almost overwhelming degree. Even though they are surrounded by such large vegetation, their face is somewhat perfectly illuminated, showcasing their soft face with their chin tilted rightward. On their neck rests a very large singular plastic tooth, adding to the artificial feeling of the photograph. The subject's hair is surprisingly modern compared to the rest of the set pieces, appearing almost Victorian. The photograph could be read as a critique of the belief women are inherently passive and submissive sexually. comparing the idea visually to an archaic period of human existence with choice set pieces. The artificiality of the photograph could be a way of showing the viewer how fake and performed this idea of female sexuality truly is. Another prominent thinker Cahun would look to for inspiration is 19th century sexologist Havelock Ellis, specifically his idea of a third sex that is neither masculine nor feminine. In Ellis's studies centered on the idea of homosexuality, he claims that all humans are born both male and female, and that sexual orientation develops later. The underlying logic of this study being that because homosexuals are born both male and female, and because their sexual orientation is a part of the same phenomenon as heterosexuals, homosexuals constitutes another category completely, a third sex. Using this idea as possible inspiration, we can see that Cahun tends to emphasize non-feminine and non-reproductive bodies, distorting the image of her own body into something without gender, focusing their audience's point of view toward the limits of knowledge and, consequently, the margins of society. By exploring these concepts, Cahun began to broach the subjects many still found taboo visually. Even though they were fully embraced by the thriving lesbian subculture of Paris in the early 1920s, not everyone accepted or even acknowledged those with queer gender identities. The category of woman has never been singular or stable, and many, because of normative ideas about body size, race, age, and disability, have been barred from its rigid confines. These are still issues prevalent in our society today, many still not understanding and accepting those who identify as non-binary. There is a popular misconception that gender nonconformity is a relatively new phenomenon, yet these photographs, as well as the writings of Cahun, showcase how long these ideas have been in the minds of queer people. Through the ups and the downs, Cahun continued creating art that represented their innermost thoughts. Even while they were imprisoned in a Nazi prison camp, they made sure to write and continue expressing their innermost thoughts. Cahun used their camera in a variety of costumes as a way to approach their feelings of dysphoria, oftentimes transforming their female body into something unrecognizable to the viewer. This visual distortion was a way to address their own internal struggle with their female body and the many negative connotations and misconceptions that came with that body. Claude Cahun died December 8, 1954, at 60 years old. They died having lived a long life with their romantic and creative partner Marcel Moore, creating an assortment of works that address ideas central to their lives. They fought a fascist regime, survived a death sentence, fled a Nazi prison camp, and continued making work until their death. Even while in prison, they made a point to explore the ideas of self and gender creatively, writing their deepest and most personal thoughts down. They would continue to write, later publishing a book entitled Disavowals, which continued to delve into their personal feelings and thoughts as a queer person. Cahun died, having never exhibited any of their photographs. This isn't to take away any of their artistic credibility. On the other hand, it could even be argued that this made their photographs even more authentic representations of their thoughts, because they weren't made with a specific audience in mind. Cahun created these images with their partner Marcel Moore as a way to authentically approach their internal struggle as queer people in an inherently oppressive society that aimed to make them quiet and submissive. To them, it didn't matter if these works were never exhibited. They were for them to make and enjoy, a cathartic experience of acceptance and exploration.